Google Street View did some snooping, and what did they find on open Wi-Fi, and why did they do it? Well, before The Loop investigates, here are the results of our viewer poll presented by AT&T. Apparently, only 42% of you are worried about Google spying. Now, the 58% of you said that you wouldn't mind. Should probably watch this.
Have you ever felt paranoid that someone is watching your every move, or logging every website you go to, or reading all your emails? Well, as it turns out, that person is Google. The online giant has just admitted that its Street View cars have mistakenly been collecting data from unlocked Wi-Fi networks around the world for the last 3 years. While Google insists the data collection was a mistake and the offending cars have been put in park until the problem is fixed, the news has privacy advocates everywhere up in arms over the data breach. Was Google's data collection a simple oversight, or are they backpedaling after being caught with their hand in the virtual cookie jar? How much trouble is Google in, and what are they promising to do to ensure that it never happens again? I guess do no evil doesn't include see no evil. It's The Loop.
All right, joining me from San Francisco to help us make sense of it all, staff writer for CNET, Tom Krazit is here. How are you, Tom?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing very well, thank you. Now, Street View, we know that it's normally good for, catching nude sunbathers or husbands coming out of strip clubs, but it turns out they've apparently been capturing a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, basically Google admitted last week that they, in the process of capturing some data that is kind of benign about your wireless access points, they were also capturing this stuff called payload data, which is basically little packets that you send back and forth between the internet.
And how much of this data were they collecting, Tom?
Enough to freak people out. I mean, it's not the kind of thing where they were sitting outside your house and watching you download something from BitTorrent or anything like that.
No, that'd be totally hot. But yeah. People are concerned that in these little packets of payload data that there could be stuff like sensitive emails or photos, right?
Sure. There's enough that when combined with all the stuff they already know about you from your search habits could definitely disturb a lot of people.
Now, the biggest problem here, Tom, seems to be that they had to know that they were capturing all of this data, right? At some point, they had 600 gigs worth of data, worldwide. I mean, I know they give away gigs like their Snickers bars online, but I mean, they've got so much data, but 600 gigs, they had to have known that that data was something.
Well, they certainly should have known. I mean, their story is that back in 2006, when they were putting this whole thing together, they inadvertently wrote this into their software, that they would collect this kind of data as well. And it took them till 2010, when the German government got a little annoyed about what Street View was doing, for them to actually discover that it happened. I mean, it's like 3.5 years worth of snooping. And it's kind of amazing that it was an oversight for that long, if that's what you believe.
Tom, you personally, do you think it's snooping when they are? I mean, yes, they're grabbing this data, but it is being shared on open networks. It's not like they were war hacking or sitting in driveways and cracking, Starbucks passwords. Like, this was all the packets that were just floating through the air. So, do you feel like that's the bigger problem, that they were quote unquote snooping, or that they sort of lied or were misleading about it, saying that they weren't actually doing it?
I think that's the bigger problem. I mean, trust is the core part of Google's marketing campaign for itself, really. I mean, you have to believe that Google is going to treat your search data with as much respect as they say it does. And so when you come across incidents like this, you can't help but feel a little, wonder about what they're doing with that data. So I think that's really the biggest problem. I mean, I think it's also a good, call to action. Do not have unsecured wireless access points in your house.
Right.
I mean, that's stuff you should have figured out 2 years ago, but...
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, you're right about the trust issue on Google here, because just like they claim they're not actually going through your emails when you're using Gmail, they're just delivering you context-sensitive ads based off certain words. Like, well, now it makes me wonder, like, how do they know I really want 100% legitimate Japanese hentai? Is it because they're pulling out keywords, or is it because they're actually reading my emails?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes a lot of people worried. And it's the kind of thing that Google really needs to avoid, or they're going to continue to get more scrutiny in this regard. You can bet that at least the German government, who kicked this whole thing off, will investigate further. And I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. government gets involved as well. Right.
So we know Germany, Ireland was very upset. The U.S. will probably get involved as well here. But how much trouble might Google actually be in for this?
Well, apparently, we talked to a couple of people about the criminal aspects of this. You could try to make a case that this is wiretapping, that you were actually trying to grab this data. That might be hard to do. I mean, I think it might, wind up more of a civil thing. I mean, it's pretty easy to start a class action lawsuit in this country, and I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those pop up.
Right. And Tom, Google has clearly said, oh, our bad, we're going to delete the data. Whatever protocols these countries want, we'll follow it. Do you think in 5 weeks' time or even 5 years from time, is this just a blip on the radar, or is this going to be a bigger issue going forward?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, the attention spans in this industry are not exactly that long. So, if they fess up and they give a clear accounting of what they collected and how they disposed of it, then it may not be that big a deal. But it's just another example of how trust is so important to Google, and with each successive thing where they violate trust, they have a problem.
I lost you at attention span. Someone tweeted me something really hilarious. It's a Google Street View. She does not know the van is in front of her house. Okay. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you keeping us in the loop, and I recommend everybody go read your article on it over at CNET. Thank you again, sir. We appreciate it.